As we've been reporting, thousands of U.S. troops have arrived in the Middle East. Sources confirmed to CBS News the latest deployment to the region includes special operation forces like Navy SEALs and Army Rangers, in addition to thousands of Marines and Army paratroopers. Their arrival comes as President Trump again warned the U.S. would attack Iran's electric grid and oil reserves if it did not reopen the Strait of Hormuz and agree to a peace deal soon. CBS News national security analyst and Marine veteran Aaron MacLean joins us now. He's also hosted the School of War podcast. So, Aaron, good to see you. What does the deployment of these specific troops tell you about the intentions of the U.S.?
Hey, good evening. Well, it's certainly a large number of troops to be building up in the region purely as a contingency force or as a force that you have lying around for some kind of emergency. These are elite light infantry forces, and in some cases, as with the SEALs and the Rangers, special operations forces who can conduct raids, who can seize terrain, who can seize airfields. You can imagine them, for example, participating in operations in Kharg Island. President Trump said this morning that he would, quote unquote, obliterate Kharg Island, but if he chose instead to seize and hold it, these are the kinds of forces you would want for an operation like that. The Army Rangers and the 82nd Airborne often cross-train with our elite Tier 1 Army Special Operations troops, so you could imagine them being part of some sort of raid on Iran's nuclear sites in the interior of the country. But I think the big thing on most people's minds right now is what role these troops might play in opening up the Strait of Hormuz, which is currently restricted heavily to friendly American, non-belligerent commercial traffic.
So we've talked about some of the options the president can use, but does the president want to use those, or does he want to make a deal?
Oh, he wants to make a deal. I think that's genuine. If you look at his rhetoric, but also you just look at the pattern of his behavior over the years, this president always wants to make a deal. The question is, what is the formula that's mutually acceptable to him and to the Iranians? He says that the negotiations are going well. He said that last night. I think he said in the same sentence that, but with Iran, he says the negotiations are going well, but with Iran, you never know because they're going well, and then we have to blow them up every time or something to that effect. So he retains that military option. But look, the process of reopening the strait, if you like, manually, of getting an escort operation running through there, of conducting a sort of sea control exercise, potentially using some of these ground troops on islands in and around the strait. That is a protracted and costly operation, most likely under the best of circumstances. It's also an operation that exposes any troops that go into pretty significant danger. It's hard to imagine an operation like that going off with no casualties. So given the possibility of doing it manually in costly fashion on the one hand and a quick fix through negotiations on the other, I imagine he'd prefer a diplomatic solution.
You know, the saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. The Iranians are now saying that they want sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. They want to essentially charge tolls for these ships coming through. What incentive does Iran have to make a deal with President Trump?
Well, viewed from their point of view, their regime is in bad shape. They've been pretty battered over the course of the last month. Militarily, you see the Israelis in particular going after some pretty significant economic targets, steel plants, refineries, things like that. And of course, President Trump has threatened to widen that campaign against economic targets. The Israelis are hammering regime targets in Tehran. If the president goes after more Iranian economic targets, one imagines their revenue streams are going to start drying up pretty quickly. So for as much bluster as there is and as much revolutionary ideological zeal, at some point you need cash to run a regime. So their situation is not without its vulnerabilities.
All right, Aaron MacLean, thank you, as always.